I purchased my own house and let my retired parents live with me. Then Mom brought my brother in and demanded my room. Can you believe there are people who would try to kick you out of your own home? The house you bought, the bills you pay? Because that's exactly the shocking betrayal I faced, and honestly, it left me completely speechless. So, here I am, 26, and for the past year or so, I've been living with my parents. Now, before you jump to conclusions, this isn't some sad story about moving back home because I can't afford rent. No, no, no. This is the story of how I bought the house. I pay the entire mortgage, I cover all the groceries, every single bill. My parents? They don't contribute a single dime. Let me give you some background. My mom, Liz, 52, and my dad, Tom, 55, are both retired teachers. They'd been living out in the quiet countryside for years. But after they stopped working, they suddenly decided they wanted the city life. They said they were bored and wanted to be closer to exciting stuff. I thought, why not? I'm a software engineer, making good money, and the city has better job prospects for me anyway. Plus, they did a lot for me growing up. Normal family stuff. I wanted to help them out. So, we found this really nice 3-bedroom house in the city. It's not a mansion, but it's definitely comfortable. 3 bedrooms, a little backyard, a living room big enough for everyone. Since I was the one footing the entire bill, I claimed the master bedroom. Walk-in closet, private bathroom, a godsend, because honestly, sharing a bathroom with anyone is a hard pass for me. The second bedroom became my home office, since I work remotely about 80% of the time. Dual monitors, ergonomic chair, the whole setup. I figured the third bedroom would be a guest room for family visits. Simple, right? At first, things were fine. My parents seemed happy to be in the city. We settled into a routine. They'd do their retired thing, gardening, watching TV, whatever, and I'd work, pay the bills, and manage the house. I genuinely didn't mind paying for everything. I make 6 figures, they're on pensions. And hey, it's family. You don't charge family rent, do you? Then came the turning point. And let me tell you, it all happened faster than I could have imagined. One morning, at breakfast, my mom just dropped this bomb. Super casual, like it was nothing. She said, your brother Jake and Emma are thinking about moving to the city. They're not doing so well back home, and Emma's pregnant. My brother, Jake, 28, and his wife Emma, 26, had always been a bit directionless. Not outright struggling, but definitely not thriving. And a baby? That added a whole new layer. I thought, okay, maybe they'll find a small apartment. But no. My mom had other ideas. A few days later, she sat me down. With this unbelievably innocent tone, she says, "We've invited Jake and Emma to come stay with us. Just for a little while until they get back on their feet." This is where I should have seen the red flags, but I just didn't. I kind of nodded along, thinking, fine, they'll stay for a bit, then move out. Oh, how naive I was. I didn't know this was just the beginning of the utter chaos. They didn't ask if I was okay with it. They just told me after the fact. I was still trying to process it all when Jake and Emma showed up a week later, bags in hand, looking like they were moving in for the long haul. And immediately, it was clear, they thought they were staying indefinitely. The stress started to build. I'm paying for everything. Groceries, utilities, mortgage. And now I have 2 more mouths to feed, another person to care for. No one even asked me if this was okay. They just moved in like it was the most natural thing in the world. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother. He's family. But Jake, he's not exactly the most responsible guy. He always seems to find himself in a mess and then expects others to bail him out. And Emma? She's nice enough, but she has this entitled attitude. Like, she's pregnant, so the world owes her special treatment. But here's when things got really messed up. A couple of days after they moved in, Emma started with the little comments. You know, the kind that sound harmless but gnaw at you. This place is so big, it must be hard to clean all by yourself, or I can't wait until the baby is here, we're going to need so much space for all the baby stuff. I didn't pay much attention at first. Then came the kicker. One evening, after a long day of work, Jake and Emma pulled me aside. We need to talk, they said. I actually thought, great, maybe they're going to apologize for eating all my food and taking up space without offering to help. But no. Instead, Emma, with this infuriating casualness, said, so, we've been thinking, it would make more sense for us to take the master bedroom. I just stared at her. I couldn't believe my ears. We need more space, Jake chimed in, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. The baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and the private bathroom. Now, remember, I pay for the entire mortgage. The house is in my name. I buy all the groceries. I support this whole household, without asking for anything in return. And here they were, demanding I give up my own bedroom. I was floored. Utterly speechless. The sheer audacity, it hit me like a physical blow. Finally, I managed to choke out, why don't you just take the spare room? It's plenty big, and it's already set up for guests. Emma was not having it. But that room doesn't have a walk-in closet. And the baby is going to need space. I stared at them, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. I'm not giving up my room, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You can have the spare room, or you can find somewhere else to stay. Jake looked a little shocked that I wasn't just caving. But Emma? She looked absolutely offended. And that's when I knew. This was not going to end well. After that incredibly awkward conversation, where Jake and Emma straight up demanded my room, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd realize how utterly ridiculous they sounded and back off. I mean, who in their right mind asks the person paying the mortgage, buying the groceries, and keeping the lights on to just give up their space like that? But of course, that's not what happened. Not even close. Over the next couple of days, I started noticing these little things. Jake and Emma were suddenly too comfortable. Spreading their stuff all over the living room, shoes kicked off near the couch. Emma was already talking about where she'd put all the baby furniture, like the house was already theirs. I hadn't said anything yet, but that knot in my stomach was tightening. I knew something was about to give. Then, one day, I had to go into the office for a few hours. I usually work from home, but some meetings are in person. I got back around lunchtime to grab something to eat, and the second I walked in, I noticed it. Something was wrong. My stuff, my personal stuff, was in the hallway. My clothes were in a pile on the floor. My computer monitor was just sitting there, unplugged, like someone had been in the middle of moving it. My heart started to race. I knew. I just knew. But I had to see it for myself. I walked to my room. And sure enough, there was Emma, standing in the middle of it, packing up the last of my things. She didn't even look surprised when I walked in. Just glanced over, casual as ever, oh, hey, I was just finishing up. My blood ran cold. What the hell are you doing? I blurted out, probably louder than I intended. She had the nerve to look calm, collected, like this was no big deal. Your mom said we could start moving our stuff in here. The baby's coming soon, and we need the space, she said, as if it was the most normal, reasonable request in the world. My mom said? My mom, who doesn't pay a single cent towards the mortgage, thought it was okay to just hand over my room to Jake and Emma without even talking to me. I wasn't about to let this slide. No, I said, stepping into the room. You are not moving into my room. I already told you guys to take the guest room. Emma didn't like that. She crossed her arms, giving me a look like I was the unreasonable one. The guest room is too small for the baby, and there's no closet. We need more space. I was shaking with anger, but I held my ground. I don't care. You are not taking my room. I am the one paying the mortgage. I am the one who has been paying for everything in this house, and you and Jake aren't contributing anything. If you need more space, you are welcome to find your own place. By this point, I was really seeing red, and Emma was clearly getting upset too. But I didn't care. She still didn't back down. Your mom said it was fine, she repeated, as if that was the final word. That's when I truly lost it. I marched out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my mom, who, by the way, wasn't even home. The second she answered, I didn't even let her say hello. Mom, did you tell Jake and Emma they could move into my room? There was this long, awful pause on the other end. Finally, she admitted, well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have the office. It's not like you're using the room for much. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? I snapped. I pay the mortgage. I pay for all the groceries. I pay the bills. And you think it's okay for Jake and Emma to just take over my room? My mom tried to calm me down, saying it wasn't a big deal, that we're all family. But I was done listening. I am not giving them my room, and if they don't move their stuff out, they are going to need to find another place to stay. Emma must have heard me, because she came storming out of the room, looking absolutely furious. You're seriously going to throw us out with a baby on the way? Just then, Jake walked in. He must have heard the commotion, because he looked just as pissed off. What's going on? He demanded. So, I laid it all out for him. What's going on is your wife thinks she can just take over my room without even asking, and I'm telling you both right now, it is not happening. You can either stay in the guest room, or you can leave. Jake was livid. He got all defensive, going on about how they're family, how I should be willing to make sacrifices for them. But by this point, I was beyond reasoning. Sacrifices? I practically yelled. I'm already paying for this entire house. What are you guys contributing, huh? Nothing. And now you think you can just walk in and take over? The yelling got pretty loud, and it was clear neither side was backing down. My mom tried calling me back, but I ignored her. I was too pissed off to deal with her excuses. Jake kept going, saying I wasn't being fair, that they had a baby on the way, that family should stick together. But I'd had enough. I turned to both of them and said, very calmly but with absolute steel in my voice, you have until the end of the day to move your stuff out of my room. If you don't, I will move it out for you. Emma stormed off, slamming the door. Jake just stood there, glaring at me like I was the bad guy. But I didn't care. Not one bit. I wasn't about to let them walk all over me in my own house, especially when I was the one paying for everything. For the rest of the day, I retreated to my office, trying to cool down. I didn't want to deal with either of them, and I knew if I went back out there, it would just ignite another argument. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. They weren't going to take this lying down. And I had a sinking feeling my mom would get involved again. But I wasn't backing down either. Not this time. After that explosive argument with Jake and Emma, I genuinely thought, maybe, just maybe, they would finally back off. I mean, I was crystal clear, my room was not up for grabs, and they either stayed in the guest room or found somewhere else to live. Seemed pretty simple to me. But of course, things did not go that smoothly. The next day, I mostly kept to myself. I wasn't looking for more drama, honestly, I was still fuming from how things had gone down. I spent most of my time working in my office, trying to pretend like everything was normal. But by the time dinner rolled around, I could feel the tension hanging heavy in the air. It was like everyone was avoiding each other, tiptoeing around the gigantic elephant in the room. I didn't mind the quiet, though. If Jake and Emma were finally going to stay in the guest room without causing more issues, I figured I could live with that. But then, something happened that completely pushed me over the edge. That evening, I walked into the kitchen to grab some food. I had bought all the groceries, like I always do, but when I opened the fridge, it was practically empty. I'm talking food I just bought 2 days ago, gone. I checked the freezer. Same deal. I knew my parents didn't eat like that, and it certainly wasn't me. So, who else could it be? Jake and Emma. They'd probably helped themselves to everything without even asking. I was already irritated, but I tried to brush it off, thinking, whatever, I'll just pick up more tomorrow. But it wasn't just the food. When I went to sit down at the table, my mom came into the kitchen. She wouldn't meet my eye. She quietly made plates for herself, my dad, Jake, and Emma. And then, she didn't make one for me. At first, I thought she'd just forgotten, so I waited. But she finished serving everyone and sat down. I was left standing there like an idiot, watching as they all started eating. I'm not going to lie, the anger was boiling up again. It felt like they were all punishing me for standing up for myself. I looked at my mom, trying desperately to keep my cool. You didn't make me a plate. She barely looked up. You don't want to help the family, you don't eat with the family, she said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? I shot back. I pay for everything here, the groceries, the mortgage. And now I'm being iced out? She didn't even answer. My dad just sighed and kept eating, like nothing was happening, which infuriated me even more. Jake and Emma were sitting there, these smug looks on their faces, like they'd won some kind of power play. Emma even had the nerve to smile at me when I walked by. I couldn't take it anymore. I was not about to be treated like some outsider in the house that I paid for. I slammed the fridge door shut and stormed out of the kitchen, my mind racing. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I went straight to my room, grabbed my laptop, and started looking up eviction notices. I figured if they didn't want to treat me with respect, then they could find somewhere else to live. Enough was enough, right? I am not a free hotel service. Within an hour, I had the documents ready. I printed out 2 sets, one for Jake and Emma, and one for my parents. It felt weird, kicking out my own family. But at this point, they had crossed every single line. They'd been disrespecting me for weeks, acting like the house was theirs, and then freezing me out because I wouldn't cave to their ridiculous demands. I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. Once the notices were printed, I walked out to the living room where everyone was sitting, pretending like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word. I just slapped the papers down in front of my parents, then handed another set to Jake and Emma. What is this? Jake asked, picking up the papers and scanning them. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could manage. If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Jake's face went pale. He was not expecting this. Not at all. You can't be serious. Oh, I am serious, I replied. I am done with this. You've been freeloading here without contributing a thing, and now you think you can take over my house? No. Not anymore. Jake stood up, glaring at me, but I didn't budge. I was taller than him, bigger than him, and I wasn't going to be intimidated by his little temper tantrum. We're family, he said through gritted teeth. You can't just throw us out. Yes, I can, I said, stepping closer. I'm the one who pays for this house. Not you, not Emma, and not Mom and Dad. If you don't want to be respectful, you don't get to stay here. Emma, of course, immediately started crying, as if that was going to change anything. I'm pregnant, and you're kicking us out. What kind of brother are you? I'm the brother who has been paying for everything while you two take advantage of me, I shot back. You have 24 hours. That is more than generous. Jake looked like he wanted to argue more, but I could see the realization starting to sink in. I was not bluffing. My mom, who had been sitting there quietly this whole time, finally spoke up. You can't do this, honey. They're your brother and sister-in-law. This is family. But I didn't care anymore. I've already done it, I said, pointing to the eviction notice in her hands. You have 30 days to find somewhere else, too. If you're not gone by then, I'll be taking legal action. The room went dead quiet after that. My dad didn't say a word, just sat there staring at the table like he didn't know what to do. My mom looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about standing up for myself and not letting them walk all over me. After a few long minutes, I walked back to my room, leaving them to process everything. I locked my door, sat down at my desk, and took a deep breath. I had just done something I never thought I would have to do, kick out my own family. But you know what? It felt good. It felt right. I wasn't going to be taken advantage of anymore. The house was dead quiet for the rest of the night. No one came to my door. No one tried to argue with me. I think they all realized that I wasn't messing around anymore. If they didn't respect me, they didn't deserve to live here. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Update 1. After handing out those eviction notices, I figured the tension in the house would either explode, or everyone would finally back off and take me seriously. Either way, I knew there was no going back. I had drawn my line in the sand, and I wasn't about to let anyone step over it again. But instead of the blow-up I was expecting, the house just got quiet. Too quiet, honestly. The morning after, I woke up early, earlier than usual, just because I couldn't really sleep. I guess I was kind of waiting for something to happen, you know? Like maybe Jake would come banging on my door, demanding I change my mind, or perhaps my parents would start pleading with me to reconsider. But none of that happened. When I finally walked into the kitchen to make breakfast, it was empty. No one was up yet. No Jake, no Emma, no parents. For a second, I thought maybe they had packed up in the middle of the night and left without saying anything, but I knew that was just wishful thinking. I made my coffee, sat down at the table, and waited. I wasn't in the mood to make small talk, and I definitely wasn't in the mood to explain myself again. What I had done was necessary. They had pushed me too far, and there was no way I could keep living like that. They didn't respect me, and they sure as hell didn't respect the fact that I was paying for everything. All I wanted was some basic decency, and they couldn't even give me that. After a while, my mom came into the kitchen, her face looking like she'd barely slept. She didn't say anything at first, just grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. It was the first time we had really been alone since I handed her the eviction notice. The awkward silence hung in the air for what felt like forever before she finally spoke. "Honey," she started, her voice soft and tired. "I know things have gotten out of hand." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my coffee, waiting for the rest of whatever she was going to say. I knew an apology was coming, or at least some version of one, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. "I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother," she continued, her voice cracking just a little. "We were just trying to help them, and I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you." That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to admit it, at least not so soon. For a second, I thought maybe she was finally getting it, that I wasn't the villain in this situation. But I still couldn't shake off the frustration from how everything had gone down. "You didn't just ignore what I wanted," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You sided with them every single time, like you just assumed I would roll over and let them take whatever they wanted." "I know," she said, almost in a whisper. "But we thought, well, you've always been the strong one. Jake, he's never had it easy." That was her excuse every single time. Jake wasn't strong. Jake had struggled more. Jake needed more support. It was like they didn't think I had any limits because I was the one who had my life together. "And you think I've had it easy?" I asked, my anger simmering just below the surface. "I'm the one who bought this house. I'm the one who pays the mortgage. I pay for the groceries. I've been carrying all of you. And you think I can just keep doing that forever?" She looked down at her coffee, not saying anything for a few seconds. "I know you've done a lot more than we could have asked for, but Jake, with the baby on the way." I cut her off. "This isn't about the baby. This is about respect, and you guys haven't shown me any. She sighed, clearly exhausted by the whole situation, but I wasn't about to let her off with a few tired excuses. You know, we just thought we were doing the right thing, she finally said. Jake and Emma, they don't have much. And whose fault is that? I shot back. I didn't ask them to move in. I didn't ask for any of this. They need to figure out their own lives, and you can't keep bailing them out by throwing me under the bus. She nodded, finally seeming to understand. Or at least trying to. We'll figure something out, she said, her voice quieter now. But please, don't push us out. Not like this. I sat back in my chair, trying to calm down. It wasn't like I wanted to kick them out. I mean, they were my parents. But at the same time, I couldn't keep living in a situation where they didn't respect my boundaries. I had let too much slide, and now I had to put my foot down. I don't want to push you out, I said, trying to be as calm as I could. But things need to change. I can't keep living like this, being treated like I don't matter in my own house. Either things change, or, yeah, you will have to find somewhere else to live. She didn't argue, just nodded quietly. Okay, she said. We'll figure something out. After that, she left the kitchen, and I was alone again with my thoughts. I wasn't sure if anything was actually going to change, but at least it seemed like they were finally starting to take me seriously. Jake and Emma hadn't shown their faces yet, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but either way, they were on borrowed time. Later that afternoon, Jake finally showed up, and of course, he looked like he'd been brooding over what had happened the night before. He didn't even say hi when he walked into the living room, just sat down across from me with that same pissed-off expression he always had when he didn't get his way. So, this is how it's going to be, he asked, his voice dripping with bitterness. You're really going to kick us out? I gave you 24 hours, I said, not even looking up from my phone. If you're still here tomorrow, I'm calling the police. Jake scoffed, shaking his head like I was the bad guy. We're family. Yeah, and family doesn't take advantage of each other, I shot back. You've had weeks to figure this out. I'm not your fallback plan. He didn't have much to say after that. He just sat there for a few minutes before getting up and storming off again. Typical Jake. He was always the type to run when things didn't go his way. And this time was no different. The rest of the day went by quietly. Too quietly, if I'm being honest. I didn't know what Jake and Emma were going to do, but I was not about to change my mind. I had given them a clear deadline, and they knew I wasn't bluffing. The next 24 hours were going to decide everything. Update 2, the next morning, after all the chaos, I woke up and just laid there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. I knew today was the day. Jake and Emma had 24 hours, and that deadline was ticking away. It was weird, though. I wasn't even mad anymore. I had already accepted what had to happen. And at this point, it was more about following through. When I got up and headed into the kitchen, I noticed right away that the house felt different. Not tense, exactly, but just quiet. Like the calm before something big happens. No one was in the kitchen, so I figured I'd make myself some breakfast. The fridge was still kind of empty from Jake and Emma's last raid on the groceries, but I made do with what was left. As I sat there eating, I started thinking about how this whole situation had spiraled out of control so fast. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that things were fine. My parents and I were getting along. I was working, paying the mortgage, covering the groceries, and life was just kind of moving along like normal. Then Jake and Emma show up, and everything went off the rails. It's crazy how fast things can change when people start feeling entitled to stuff they didn't earn. A couple of hours later, I heard someone coming down the hallway. It was my dad. He walked in quietly, grabbed a cup of coffee, and sat down at the table across from me. He didn't say anything at first, just took a sip and looked out the window. Finally, he spoke. Jake and Emma are leaving today. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if he was telling me because they had decided to leave on their own, or if he was just reminding me of the deadline. Either way, I nodded and kept eating. They don't have anywhere to go, he continued, his voice low. They're going to stay at a motel for a while until they figure things out. I stopped mid-bite and looked at him. Part of me felt bad, but the bigger part of me knew this was what had to happen. I had been too nice for too long, and if I didn't put my foot down now, they would just keep taking advantage. I gave them time, I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't want it to come to this, but they left me no choice. He didn't argue, didn't try to guilt-trip me, which was surprising. He just nodded and kept drinking his coffee. I think he finally understood that I wasn't going to back down this time. After everything that had happened, there was no going back to how things were. Around noon, Jake and Emma started packing their things. I stayed in my room for most of it, not wanting to get into another argument or hear any more passive-aggressive comments. But after a while, I could hear Jake's voice getting louder from down the hall. So, I knew it was only a matter of time before something went down. Sure enough, not long after, Jake knocked on my door. I opened it, and he stood there with that same pissed-off look he'd had since I gave him the eviction notice. "You're really going to let this happen?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You're just going to kick us out like this?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I gave you 24 hours. I told you what needed to happen." He shook his head, his jaw clenched. "We're family, man. You don't do this to family." I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. Family doesn't take advantage of each other. I'm not just kicking you out for no reason. You've been freeloading here for weeks without contributing anything. I've been paying this mortgage, the groceries, everything. And instead of being grateful, you tried to take my room and push me out of my own house. I am not going to let that happen." Jake didn't say anything for a few seconds. I could tell he was mad, but there was nothing left for him to argue. He knew I was right, even if he didn't want to admit it. "So that's it, huh?" he finally muttered. "You're just throwing us out." "I'm giving you the same option I gave you yesterday," I replied. "You can find a way to live somewhere else, or you can stay in the guest room and actually respect me and my space. But if you can't do that, then yeah, you're leaving." Jake glared at me, then turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door and let out a long breath. It was exhausting, but I knew it had to be done. By mid-afternoon, Jake and Emma were gone. I didn't see them leave, and honestly, I didn't want to. I wasn't looking for some emotional goodbye or anything like that. They packed up their stuff, loaded it into their car, and drove off without saying a word to me. The house felt different after they left. Quieter. Less tense. My parents didn't say much to me that day. I think they were still processing everything that had happened. My mom looked upset, but she didn't say anything about it. Maybe she finally realized that I wasn't the one who had caused all this. Jake and Emma had pushed me too far, and this was the result. That evening, my mom knocked on my door. She came in, sat down on the edge of my bed, and just stared at the floor for a while. I could tell she was trying to find the right words. "They're gone," she said softly. I nodded, not saying anything. "I never thought it would get to this point," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you." I looked at her, feeling some of the frustration lift a little. "It's not that I didn't want to help," I explained. "But you guys treated me like I didn't matter. Like my needs and my space weren't important." She sighed and nodded. "You're right. We should have seen it sooner." We sat in silence for a few minutes. I could tell she was upset, but at least now she was starting to understand where I was coming from. "I don't want you and Dad to leave," I said, breaking the silence. "But if things don't change, I can't live like this." She nodded again, standing up slowly. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Things will be different. I promise." As she left the room, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The situation with Jake and Emma was over, but there was still work to be done with my parents. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but at least now it felt like they were willing to listen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The house was quiet, and the tension that had been hanging in the air was gone. It wasn't a perfect solution, but at least now I had my space back. So, what do you think? Have you ever had family push your boundaries like this, especially in your own home? I really want to know your thoughts. Tell me what you would have done in my shoes.